What's up, guys? Welcome back to Mind Keys. Happy 2021 to all of you, first and foremost. I hope that this year treats us all much, much better than last year, and that we all grow from the adversity and the challenges that we've dealt with and put them behind us, actualize the lessons, level up, transform, heal, make a difference in the world. You know, by changing yourself, I know that as you change yourself, you do make a difference in the world around you, whether that's just in your closest relationships or, you know, at a bigger kind of scale. And so let's leverage everything we've gathered and experienced and learned, no matter if it was difficult or easy, turn that into an amazing 2021. So for today's video, I wanted to start to hone in and start to really deliver content around this topic of personal development and psychedelics. And this is really what I'm going to be focusing and targeting my channel, my content around, because I have so much to say about it. It's an area of huge passion of mine, and it's something that I have a lot to teach you, and I have a lot to offer, and I have a really unique perspective on. The content I'm coming up with right now is really unique. I can't think of anything else like it that I've seen out there, and I'm looking. So stay tuned and let's go ahead and get into it. I'm assuming if you're watching this video that you are somebody who is at least to some degree interested in this topic, in this intersection between personal development and psychedelics, and how to really leverage the experiences we have with psychedelics into lasting personal growth, personal change, personal healing, personal transformation, self-actualization, an increase in quality of life, the blossoming of your soul, however you want to look at that. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about. So today I want to answer the most basic, obvious question in this kind of arena, which is, are psychedelics even legit as a form of personal development? And then I want to explain to you what I started to discover and find as being different avenues, different ways that we can go ahead to start to use psychedelics for personal growth and personal transformation. So let's go ahead and get into that, and we'll talk a bit about it. So first things first, the obvious question, you know, and the very fair critique, if we want to look at kind of the challenges to the idea and the notion of using psychedelics for actual personal development, actual personal growth, you know, the critique is, well, it's just a drug experience, right? It's just some sort of crazy, weird set of hallucinations and crazy set of thoughts that bubble up through you after you take this drug, and whatever you learn and whatever you see is not really relevant or valid, right? That by way of you being in an altered state, whatever it is you might have learned about yourself or about life or about the world around you is somehow not accurate, not true, couldn't be useful, couldn't be valid or practical, really, you know? And I think that's a fair challenge. I think that's a fair place to start. And I think that really the reasons people are asking this is because personal growth can be incredibly hard, can be incredibly difficult, and people put blood, sweat, and tears into changing their lives all the time and fail all the time. And people want what's real. And so I think, you know, when you're talking about something that can seem like a fantasy, especially when you're looking at all these kind of fake gurus and fake spiritual teachers and, you know, all these kind of pie in the sky spiritual promises, it's a really reasonable question actually to be asking, is this real and does it work? And so my short answer is yes, it is real and it does work. And I want to give you a few reasons why I think that's the case. And then after that, I want to talk, like I said, with you about how we can do this. How can we go about using psychedelics to create actual personal change, personal transformation? I do have an answer to that question. I can't wait to share it with you. So the first reason that it's valid, you know, from my point of view, that psychedelic personal development or psychedelic coaching or psychedelic therapy or any of these kinds of emerging fields is valid. Point number one is that really, if you think about it, you can use any life experience for personal growth. Personal growth isn't about the content of your life. It's about how you relate to the content, or maybe not your life, your experiences. It's not so much about what the experiences are. It's about how you relate to them. So you can have amazing life experiences. You could have tragic life experiences. You could have beautiful life experiences. You could have boring, mundane life experiences. You could have heavy life experiences. You could have really, outlandish. And if you're into personal development at all, if you study any of these teachers for any length of time, you'll hear all these stories from people who were monks, to people who were professionals, to people who were housewives, to people who were yada, 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 yada. It doesn't matter the walk of life you come from, or the kind of crazy things you've lived through, or the kind of, whatever. It can all be used as fodder for personal growth. So that's point number one. So, along those same lines of thinking, obviously, if somebody could be a heroin addict and let that and hit rock bottom and have that be a tragedy that like catalyzes growth, why couldn't somebody have some other form of drug experience also catalyze growth, right? Like, it just makes sense if you think about it. My second point here is that psychedelics pretty reliably, for most people, increase self-awareness. You start to understand your own mind better. You start to understand your own thinking. You start to understand your own emotions. You start to understand the deeper currents inside of you. You start to understand maybe aspects of your spiritual self, or aspects of your personal history. They increase your understanding of yourself. And if you think about it, just logically again, how could you not, as you increase self-awareness, how could that not contribute in some way to personal growth, to personal development, to self-actualization? Think about it. I mean, it's just common sense. Obviously, as you increase self-awareness, you increase your capacity to operate in a different way. You increase your capacity to heal from the past. You increase your capacity to understand your strengths and weaknesses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I think, any tool for self-awareness, whether it's journaling or yoga or an ayahuasca ceremony, or, going to the gym every day, or, whatever it is that challenges you and stimulates you to become more self-aware, is useful and positive. So that's point number two. Okay, and then point number three, this is based on a study that I just read recently. I'll probably do another video about it. But there's a study going around that basically shows that psychedelics increase trait openness. And what they start to discover about trait openness is that it's one of the major key factors to lasting happiness in life. That people who are high in openness generally tend to relate better to other people, generally tend to relate to new information better, to change in life better. They're more adaptive, they're more flexible, they're more able to negotiate, they're more able to collaborate. And generally, people who are more open are just not going to be stressed out, if you think about it, because you're by default open to life. Therefore, as life comes in to your experience in all kinds of different ways, which it will do because it's life, it's chaotic, it's dynamic and fluid and evolving and changing all the time. What you get is the capacity to adapt. What you get is the capacity to be flexible and to meet life on its own terms, rather than it requiring it to be some other way than how it is. So that's point number three. So far, why is it valid? It's valid because you can use anything for personal growth. It's valid because self-awareness, which is something that psychedelics pretty reliably engender, is also something that's highly, highly useful for personal growth, personal development. Getting excited again. And point number three here is that, of course, as it increases trait openness in you, you're going to become more happy. You're going to discover new ways to relate to life that deliver you more satisfying results for you. So that's all worth considering. Okay, so with all that being said, in defense of why this may be a valid path, I want to explain to you some of what I've learned about how we can use psychedelics for personal development, because there are ways and there are ways, if you know what I mean. Like, some of the ways that people try to use psychedelics for personal growth don't work in the long run. They don't last. They don't solve the problem. They don't create a permanent change. They don't fix. They don't level you up. And then other things that people do, for me and my personal experience, I'll put it that way, aren't very effective or aren't very powerful or are very vague, very loose, very woo-woo. And believe me, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. I'm not closed off to woo-woo, but when we're talking about improving life circumstance, we need something that's clear-cut and effective and lasting, ideally. So I want to share with you what I've been discovering works and what doesn't work, and kind of give you a sense of what may lie ahead in terms of how you can use psychedelics to improve your own life. So if that interests you, check this out. So the first way I would use psychedelics to improve my own life, if I were interested in such a thing, hypothetically speaking, allegedly, is I would consider microdosing, and then I would consider using the kind of increased neural flexibility, neuroplasticity, the increased brain adaptivity that you get from microdosing. And I would leverage that neuroplasticity to then do coaching, therapy, or some sort of change work like what I do with people. So when you're microdosing and then you add this kind of deep inquiry, deep interaction with whatever it is you want to change, you discover insights, you discover new ways of seeing old problems, you discover flexibility inside of yourself, or maybe a little more ease or a little more comfort or spaciousness when dealing with something that you've been stuck with or challenged with. So the first way that I think they'll be highly useful is kind of this interaction of very low doses, kind of leveraging that neuroplasticity plus some sort of change work. I'm a fan of change work because in my experience, just talk therapy by itself doesn't always really change things. It helps create insight, but insight, in my opinion, doesn't change the way we process or run or our bodies or our nervous systems in new ways. Just understanding isn't enough to get the unconscious to change. So, but that's kind of a topic for another time. But yeah, microdosing plus some sort of change work or even therapy is going to be one of those ways that is highly, highly, highly effective. I have more to say about psychedelic therapy, my opinions on it, my insights about it, and it's something that I'm using to kind of create a course for some people who want to really shift and heal stuff around depression, self-esteem, self-love issues, that kind of a thing. So I'll have that out sometime in the near future. But in the meantime, just think about low dose, microdose, plus active change work. So the second way that I think we can really use psychedelics powerfully for lasting personal growth and personal development purposes is generally what you could think of as the copy and paste effect. This is one of the many ways I work with people. The basic idea is that you want to cultivate highly positive, powerful, good experiences, as many as possible, really. And then you want to connect those, what are called resource states. So that would be when you are feeling, whether it's empowered or just super sharp and clear or super loving or super positive or whatever the resource state is. Could be any sort of positive state. You want to then, these are useful to be applied to the moments where you're not in a positive resource state and you're in a negative state. So what you can basically do is take a resource state and copy it and then paste it onto whatever the problem is, and it will erase the neural circuitry or rewrite the neural circuitry of the problem. So this is basically like a copy paste kind of situation at a neurological level. Now there's a way to do it that works and a way to do it that doesn't work, but what's cool about psychedelics is if you're doing, say, a full dose, you're going to have multiple resource state experiences within one trip, right? So assuming you can remember the trip and you haven't dosed so hard that you didn't learn anything and you basically just, blissed out and came back and retained nothing. If you got something out of it, any sort of teaching, any sort of insight about yourself or about life or about the world or any sort of state of, care or compassion or whatever, I hope you get my point. You take that resource state, you apply it back to the problem in a particular way, and all of a sudden what you get is lasting change. So this is the second way that I would use them, and I would probably do that after the fact in an integration session. So if you want to integrate the experiences that you had and maybe start to live more in alignment with what you experienced or what you learned, maybe you had a moment of deep inner peace and you want to live through that inner peace every day, there's a way to plug that in so that your brain knows how to access that state when you're not high on psychedelics. So that would be the second way that you would use it. So you have kind of during a low dose session, then you have afterwards, post-session, during integration, using this kind of copy-paste technique that I'm talking about here. And, you may be wondering right now, hearing me talk about this, well, what about just using full dose, a normal macro dose, or what used to just be called taking psychedelics, and using that, and then doing some sort of change work or therapy work while the person's on the psychedelic. And if you research psychedelic therapy at all, you'll notice that generally speaking, this is not the way it's done in psychedelic therapy. And, I come less from a psychotherapy background, more from an NLP and hypnosis background. So, in theory, there's a lot I could do with a person using hypnosis while they're on full dose. But you start to run into questions about, just kind of improper application, using the wrong technique at the wrong time, not reading the person's inner experience correctly, and generally, having them put their authority, projecting their authority onto you as a therapist or a coach or a hypnosis, whatever. The client can end up projecting their power and their sense of authority onto you rather than recognizing it inside themselves, which is really where the healing is. And so, generally speaking, one of the problems with full dose therapy is that the client is less likely to work through it on their own, and they're more likely to, because they're so suggestible, rely on me or any therapist. Another interesting thing about full dose change work or therapy or anything like that is that you also run into this problem, probably a bit of state-dependent learning, where you may have heard of the concept of, if you study stoned or you study, after drinking, you need to go take the test when you're stoned or drunk, that kind of a thing. So whatever brain state you're in when you write the information into your brain, you need to be in that state again when you want to output that information. So if you think about a psychedelic epiphany, right, and you're high on 200 mics of LSD and you have some sort of moment, an aha moment about life and about yourself, and you're like, yes, I get it. And then you want to apply that. By the time you come back down to your normal everyday consciousness, you are so far away from where you were consciousness and energy and neurochemistry wise from those 200 mic type experiences that it's not really easy to access that in a way, so you can forget, basically. That's what I'm getting at here. So in my experience so far, full dose, regular, psychedelic use for personal growth purposes, and then trying to do the work while high, with some sort of a therapist or a facilitator who is doing anything more than just trip sitting and kind of holding space with you, questionable in terms of how effective it is. Not in terms of, ethics aside. I think, trip sitting is highly ethical. I think, looking after people, making sure that they're okay, even gentle suggestions, like some therapists do who are highly skilled and know what they're doing, highly ethical, no issue with it at all. Let me be clear about that. But if we're talking about, the work that I do, or, if you went to a hypnotherapist or an NLP practitioner, I would say in general, you don't want to do that while you're really high on psychedelics. You want to do that, after you've taken the psychedelics, and then you can integrate and explore that and kind of use trance as a medium to kind of vivify some of those experiences and bring them to life again and plug them into your life. So interestingly enough, what tends to work is either low dose during, or if you're going to go high dose, afterwards. But high dose during doesn't seem to work so well. So that's about it for this video. I do have a lot more to say, tons of content coming out on this video. I've been looking at really breaking down exactly what happens when we microdose and kind of the common issues, the common things that come up for people, and created some content. I have a mini course coming out shortly that'll show you how you can work with your microdosing to start to heal and transform yourself and start to integrate the experiences that you're having and really deepen your self-connection. So that's going to be on the way soon, probably in the next month or so, give or take. Then I have another course, like I said already, on the way about, how to, use psychedelics to kind of deepen our experience of self-love, self-esteem, healing depression, healing, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll be talking more on this channel at length about all these topics. So if you have any questions, if you have any anything you want me to talk about, any concepts you want to explore, you want my perspective as someone who's traveled the psychedelic path myself and studied coaching, studied hypnotherapy, studied NLP, and is obviously I'm coming from a very genuine place. I'm not trying to just create an image here. I'm trying to create a real connection with you. If you have any questions, anything you want me to talk about, I'm happy to share with you what I've learned and what I've seen. Please do me a favor. If you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, interact with the channel, let YouTube know that this is valuable content for you and this is something you want to see more often. Help others like you who are interested in this topic to see it. Anyways, much love. Be well. I'm about to run out of battery, so I'm going to call this a good video, and I will see you guys in a week. Take care.